Let us pray.
Almighty God, by whom alone kings reign and princes decree justice, and from whom alone cometh all counsel, wisdom, and understanding, we thine unworthy servants here gathered together in thy name, do most humbly beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above, to direct and guide us in all our consultations, and grant us that we, having thy fear always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interests, prejudice, and partial affections, the result of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the King, the public weal, peace and tranquility of St. Lucia, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. The grace of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all, now and forevermore. Amen.
Good morning, honorable members, and happy to see so many of you here this morning after the hectic last few days of Carnival revelry. Members, I am in receipt of correspondence from the member from Miko South advising of his unavailability for today's sit-in. And before I go any further, I now seek your attention as I ask you to join with me in viewing a short video and to thereafter extend congratulations.
Julian Alfred, this is her pro debut. Tamari Davis probably got the best start, and Julian Alfred's got a flyer as well, and Richardson will have to come strong in the second half of the race. It's Julian Alfred leading at the moment. Richardson will come with the late challenge, but it's Alfred who takes it from Richardson. It's a big scout for Julian Alfred on her professional debut, and the Solution athlete turns over Shakira Richardson, who's been beating all comers. Her unbeaten run in finals this year comes to an end, and it just proves that Julian Alfred is right up there with a big chance of bringing Lucia their first women's 100 metres world medal in a month's time. 10:89 the winning time from Shakira Richardson, sub 11 again on her inside Davis for first. Julian Alfred, this is her pro debut. Tamari Davis probably got the best start, and Julian Alfred's got a flyer as well, and Richardson will have to come strong in the second half of the race. It's Julian Alfred leading at the moment. Richardson will come with the late challenge, but it's Alfred who takes it from Richardson. It's a big scout for Julian Alfred on her professional debut, and the Solution athlete turns over Shakira Richardson, who's been beating all comers. Her unbeaten run in finals this year comes to an end, and it just proves that Julian Alfred is right up there with a big chance of bringing Lucia their first women's 100 metres world medal in a month's time. 10:89 the winning time from Shakira.
On not only winning her first professional race, but in the process defeating the previously undefeated, this year at least, Shakira Richardson. I know the MP for Castries South, and I call on the Prime Minister to keep him in his seat there because he may be floating. I know the MP for Castries South is beaming with pride after overseeing a successful carnival to have this cap off with his constituents' major international achievement. On the matter of the carnival, I know it's early days yet, but from all accounts, the Royal St. Lucia Police Force did a superb job, and we thank them for the service. I would like to acknowledge the presence of our junior Calypso monarch, Mr. Donald Bradley of Swazel, And for those of you who didn't think our police force has talent, Daniel is the son of Police Inspector Terry Bradley, who is present with us today. Just as an aside, the Prime Minister thought it might have been the member for Suzel, but one is a surname and the other is a Christian name. I'd also like to acknowledge the king of the bands, Mr. Giovanni Santoma, of course, Giovanni is the son of legendary Sir Dunstan. And I was teasing him this morning that he was only 2 years old when I was in the balcony of his house helping to design the St. Lucia national flag. And I also reminded him that the flag was not designed for independence, but instead for statehood in 1967. And the original blue was turquoise. And in 1979, Sir Dunstan wrote then Prime Minister Sir John requesting a change of color. Sir John wrote Her Majesty the Queen, who granted permission, and the turquoise in 1979 was changed to cerulean blue. So I do have a little part of the national flag with me. Is our Queen of the Bands there as well? No, we did invite our Queen of the Bands. She hasn't been able to make it yet. Kim Daisy. And also with us is the arranger of the, and I was told to say that, the 5-time, and I'm not going to tell you it's the president who told me to say that, but the 5-time Panorama champions, the Babano Still Orchestra, which the member for Grosley has also told me to say is housed in the constituency of Grosley. Thank you very much, members. Statements from ministers. Minister of Creative Industries.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. So, Speaker, as I did on the last occasion, I want to address this Honorable House to express congratulations to the winners that we have present with us today. It was quite an honor on the last occasion to have the former monarchs join us. And of course, today is a very special delight to have the junior Calypso monarch with us. And he tells me he's going to form one in the next school year. And we certainly look forward to him continuing to be part of this, valuable art form of singing Calypso. And I hope, of course, he also extends to other aspects of it, including writing of Calypso and everything else. And I suspect that he would excel at it. And of course, we have with us the maestro himself, Alison Mackey. I did say to him that I have to keep a promise to invest in another pan side, which happens to have as its leader somebody from Castro South. And I also told him I know the Prime Minister is making determined efforts to get his pan side going. So he will have some increased competition next year. But if you know Alison well enough, he will welcome that. And he'll probably help them to get established to take part in the competition. So he can beat them because he's a consummate professional, and anybody who knows him will tell you that. I had the delight during the arts component of the Jazz and Arts Festival to hear the big pan side that he led play in the square, and it was the best pan music I'd ever heard in St. Lucia during that event. So we all know Alison and what he produces. And of course, my dear friend, Giovanni Santome, And I told him this morning when I saw his costume come on stage, I actually got goosebumps. He and I have spent many, many hours and nights in Mascom building costumes. And I'll tell you something, he still keeps the old tradition of how he builds his costume. He's not changed, he's not moved away from his established method of building costumes. And to see him come this year and win was a delight. I can tell you, working with him is no easy task. Many words have been exchanged over the years whilst building costumes, but he's a professional, he's a perfectionist, and he's somebody who puts his all. He really, really loves this art form, and I can say to you, I don't know why he keeps doing it, but every year this man goes for days and nights to make sure he produces costumes, and it's a real joy to see that he came back this year and win. Mr. Speaker, let me take the opportunity on behalf of all my colleagues in here to express our appreciation to the Royal St. Lucia Police Force for the exemplary work. Our primary concern was citizens' safety and security for this carnival, primary. And I can see from all reports it was incident-free. I saw the police out in their numbers. I saw them very professional, very diligent in what they did. And we had a very good season. And we must say a special thank you to all the police officers. It had to be difficult on them to put in the amount of hours that they put in across all the private fetes, all the national events, having Jouvert as well as the parade. And seeing the parade yesterday and the amount of people who were out, you can imagine what the police went through, Mr. Speaker. So we have to express, our thanks to the leadership and the officers of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force and the other emergency services that provided support. Mr. Speaker, you have to say thank you to the Carnival Planning and Management Committee and the Carnival Music Management Committee for the work they did. Tamara Gibson, Claude Paul, and all the team, Mr. Speaker, that really oversaw the carnival season. We have to say thank you to them. The volunteers, Mr. Speaker, the social media workers we had, the cameramen, the videographers, everyone who really made the last few days the phenomenal success it was. Of course, you cannot have carnival without bacchanal. So they had to have enough talk about the Bam Bam wall and the colors of the wall and everything else, Mr. Speaker. For me, I have no difficulty in everybody expressing their views. We must let all ideas contend. Anyone can share their views, their opinions. Of course, we always ask they do it in a respectful way. But please send in your suggestions, send in your criticisms of how we can make the product better. Already this morning, I was really pleased to see on Facebook, somebody was suggesting that we should paint it over as we prepare for Journée Creole and to use the madras and images of Creole heritage, and almost suggesting it doesn't have to remain a carnival wall. Somebody put forward that as an idea. But the more ideas we get from St. Lucians, the more suggestions as to how we can be better, I think it would do us a lot good. Not every suggestion has to be a roro and a personal, making it personal and, and really becoming negative. Let us look to make St. Lucia Carnival the premier carnival in the Caribbean. We may not be the biggest, but we have some very iconic, elements of our carnival, including the waterfront. I mean, the sights of the waterfront with the yachts alongside the waterfront and the colors along the waterfront is a phenomenal sight to behold, Mr. Speaker. We have so much that we can, we can really sell as St. Lucia. So let me, as Minister, express my thanks to everyone who made Carnival a success, Mr. Speaker. And, my colleagues are reminding me about CCC, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank them too for the contribution that they make, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, we will have a lot more to talk about when we meet and we do our review as to how different agencies can work better and to make sure that we really have the best setting for St. Lucia Carnival.
Thank you, Minister. And just to assure you that I found out this morning that Daniel is also the junior extempo monarch. So pretty soon he'll be writing. Okay. Motions? Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the following resolution standing in my name. Mr. Speaker, before I read the resolution, as Minister of National Security, I would like also to thank the Royal St. Lucia Police Force and the City Police. You see, Mr. Speaker, we always are very quick to condemn when things go wrong, but when things work out, we seldom say, give the proper praises. The police force has been under tremendous pressure over the last weeks and months and years, but particularly over the last few weeks. And they showed the resolve and the commitment to doing their job, and understood that what's important is to remain focused. And they remain focused, and for the season, there were no major incidents, and I want to thank them for that, Mr. Speaker. I also want to comment, Mr. Speaker, on how it seems almost there are people who seem almost ready to rejoice at what they perceive to be things that will hurt the government, and I speak about a fake murder on the internet on Friday, which got widespread publicity. And I want to call on people, that is very sad, Mr. Speaker, for these kind of things to be put out in that manner. It doesn't augur well for the country, it doesn't augur well for the future of the country. But I want to thank the St. Lucia Police Force. I want to thank the Commissioner and the men and women of the force for their work. And I want them to continue to do what they have to do. I also want to thank the RSS, members of the Regional Security System, who were also on the ground for the Carnival Days. And also to extend my congratulations to the icons over there. And Mr. Speaker, you failed to say that Bradley is from my constituency. You forgot.
At the last sitting, the member for Swazelle claimed. Yeah.
He told me. Anyway, Mr. Speaker, that being said, I'll proceed with the resolution. Whereas it is provided under Section 46(4)(a) of the Value Added Tax, Cap 15.4 to the Act, that the Minister responsible for finance may, by order published in the Gazette, alter the rate of penalty under the Act. And whereas it is further provided that under Section 46(a)(4)(a) of the Act, that an order made pursuant to Section 46(4)(a) of the Act is subject to an affirmative resolution of Parliament. And whereas the Minister for Finance seeks approval of the draft value-added tax alteration of rate of penalty order by an affirmative resolution of Parliament to alter from the 1st day of May 2023 to the 1st day of May 2024 the rate of penalty to 0% of the tax paid on up to the financial year 2021. Be it resolved that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approves the value-added tax alteration of rate of penalty order, which alters from the 1st day of May 2023 to the 1st day of May 2024 the rate of penalty to 0% on the tax paid up to the financial year of 2021. Mr. Speaker, you may recall that last sitting, I came to Parliament and asked for a resolution to waive the interest, Mr. Speaker, the interest on the value-added tax and other taxes, Mr. Speaker. All interest and penalties, Mr. Speaker, on all taxes, the VAT, the PAYE, the hotel accommodation tax, withholding tax, Mr. Speaker. We waived last sitting, we waived the interest on these taxes and the penalties, but we could not waive the penalties on VAT because the VAT Act is a separate act and it's a sacred act, and sometimes it's not advisable to always be altering, etc. So we had to come to Parliament today to waive the penalties, Mr. Speaker, on VAT. So as we speak, after this resolution is passed, all the taxes, the HAT, the accumulation tax, the VAT, the PAYE, withholding taxes, there will be no penalties and interest on all these taxes. They will be waived on all these taxes up to May 2024. Mr. Speaker, that is a significant relief to the private sector and to the people, the business people who collected VAT but did not pay it over to the government. What this means, Mr. Speaker, is that, as I said, there's $599 million worth of taxes due to the government, including interest and penalties. $599 million due, including interest and penalties. What we've done, Mr. Speaker, is we've waived interest and penalties of nearly $300 million, which we waived completely. And we're asking the people who owe the government to please pay up what you owe, because the government has waived the penalties and interest. But Mr. Speaker, that is significant in that when you read or you hear about comments on people's balance sheets, when you owe the government, Mr. Speaker, in penalties and interest, it has to be shown in your balance sheet, not only as an account, but as an accounts payable, or if you want to be creative, you can put it as a long-term liability, so it doesn't affect your working capital ratios. But still, for that, you have to include it, Mr. Speaker. You have to include it in your balance sheet, because you owe the government. It's not contingent. You owe it. What that will do is these businesses now can reverse these payables. They can reverse it, Mr. Speaker. So it becomes, they have to reverse it, debit the payables, Mr. Speaker, and credit the tax owed. So that means it reduces the tax that they owe to the government and improves their balance sheet. Improves it significantly. So they can go to the bank and say to the bank, I do not owe these amount of taxes, Mr. Speaker. So that is a tremendous help to the private sector. And no one can say that this government is not trying to assist the private sector, Mr. Speaker, not trying to assist them after COVID. But these taxes were not due for COVID. These taxes were due long before COVID. We've waived all of them. So this is the government's commitment to the growth and the expansion of the private sector, Mr. Speaker. And I've said before in this honorable house that this government, no one can ever accuse this government of being anti-business or not supporting the business sector in St. Lucia. And it is clear, Mr. Speaker, it is clear. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased to ask members to support this resolution, to support this tax amnesty which you've done, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, the tax amnesty also goes to personal income tax also, you know. People who owe personal income tax, Mr. Speaker, will be waiving all the interest and the penalties. We waived it up to May 2023. We extended it now up to May 2024 for people who owe personal income taxes, Mr. Speaker. So this amnesty is unheard of in the history of St. Lucia's private sector, Mr. Speaker. All I'm asking is meet the government halfway. We've done our part. All I'm asking for the private sector and the people who owe taxes, please come to pay the government, Mr. Speaker, because when you pay the government, many things will happen in a different way. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, we are committed. We are committed. If what we are owed, we paid, when we have to pay a refund, we will refund. But we can't refund what we haven't got. Because refund, Mr. Speaker, means that you've filled in your tax and the government has the money for you. We will pay it. Once everybody pays us, we will pay it. And I also want to tell taxpayers to please go to change your tax code. Change your tax code so that the government cannot take undue taxes from you, Mr. Speaker. So you change your tax code. Now it's very simple. There's no charge. Go to Inland Revenue and change your tax code so that the tax you pay every month, it will not accumulate in terms of you paying the government too much, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I ask members to support, and I'll be back with other resolutions that will give further relief to the business sector and the taxpayers of the country. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Members, the question is that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approves the value-added tax alteration of rate of penalty order, which alters from the first day of May 2023 to the first day of May 2024 the rate of penalty to 0% on the tax paid up to the financial year of 2021. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the following resolution standing in my name. Whereas under Section 17 of the Health and Citizen Security Levy, number 16 of 2023, the Act, it's provided that the Minister of Finance may, by order published in the Gazette, amend the schedules of the Act. And whereas it's further provided under Section 17 of the Act that an order made under that section of the Act is subject to an affirmative resolution of Parliament. And whereas the Minister of Finance seeks approval of the draft Health and Citizen Security Levy, amendment of Schedules 1, 2, and 3 order, to amend Schedule 1, 2, and 3 of the Act by an affirmative resolution of Parliament. 2. In the case of Schedule 1, include the following imported goods, Customs Tariff Chapters 25, salt, sulfur, earths, and stone, plastering material, lime, and cement. Chapter 29, particles and articles thereof. Delete the following imported goods, Customs Tariff Chapters 88, aircraft, spacecraft, and parts thereof. Chapter 89, ships, boats, and floating structures. Chapter 29, special transactions. In the case of Schedule 2, delete the following services: sale of motor vehicles, other financial services, other activities ancillary to financial services. In the case of Schedule 3, under Part 1 of Paragraph 1, in relation to Chapter 17, change sugars to sugars. In relation to Chapter 44, change organic to organics. Delete exempted goods, the following Customs Tariff, Chapter 39, plastics and articles thereof. Include exempted goods, the following Customs Tariffs, Chapter 49, printed books, newspapers, pictures, and other products of printing industry, manuscripts, typescripts, and plans. Replace the exempted goods specified under Part 1, Paragraph 2. Include as exempted goods, goods under tariff headings 3701, 4702, and 90.18 and 90.22, pertaining to medical equipment and parts thereof, and goods under Chapter 85 and other chapters pertaining to security equipment. Be it resolved that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approves the draft Health and Citizen Security Levy, amendment of Schedules 1 and 3 order, which amends Schedules 1 and 3 of the Act. 2. In the case of Schedule 1, include the following imported goods, customs tariff chapters. Chapter 25, salt, sulfur, earths, and stone, plastering materials, lime, and cement. Chapter 49, plastic and articles thereof. Delete the following imported goods, customs tariff. Chapter 88, aircraft, spacecraft, and parts thereof. Chapter 89, ships, boats, and floating structures. Chapter 99, special transactions. B. In the case of Schedule 2, delete the following services: sales of motor vehicles. 19. Other financial services, activities except insurance and pension funding activities. 25. Other activities auxiliary to financial services activities. In the case of Schedule 2, delete the following services: sale of motor vehicles. 19. Other financial services activities except insurance and pension funding activities. Other activities and auxiliary to financial service activities. In the case of Schedule 3, under paragraph 1, in relation to chapter 17, change sugars to sugars. In relation to chapter 44, change organic to organics. Delete and exempted goods of foreign customs tariff chapter 49, plus and articles thereof. Include exempted goods of foreign customs tariff chapter 49, printed books, newspapers, pictures and other products of the printing industry, manuscript, typescripts and plans. Replace the exempted goods specified under Part 1, Paragraph 2. Include our exempted goods: A. Goods on the tariff headings 4701 to 4702, 19.18 to 19.22, pertaining to medical equipment and parts thereof, and goods under Chapter 85 and other chapters pertaining to security equipment. Mr. Speaker, when Parliament approved the health and security levy, Mr. Speaker, since it was a new tax, we knew that there would be need to review it, revise it, to look at it, to fine-tune it, Mr. Speaker, because we made a point that the tax was not on food, it was not on medical equipment, it was not on medical supplies, and it was not on security equipment. We made that point, Mr. Speaker. And we also made the point that at the level of importation, the 2.5% would be imposed at customs, Mr. Speaker. Since then, we've had discussions with the Chamber of Commerce, and I think that we all understood why the health and security levy had to be imposed. We understood, Mr. Speaker, and we also agreed that the government would make it possible for people who were not given the privilege of being VAT exempt or VAT zero rated. We will add them to it, Mr. Speaker. And I'll come back in a while with another resolution, Mr. Speaker, and where you'll see that the government has kept its promise, Mr. Speaker. So what we're doing is a simple amendment to the schedule to include some goods for the health and security levy, which we inadvertently left out the last time, to include them, Mr. Speaker, and to remove some which were included in error, Mr. Speaker. There is no devil in that, Mr. Speaker. All it does, it just looks at certain goods like things like printed books, newspapers, pictures, etc. These things, Mr. Speaker, they are already exempted from VAT, so we have to exempt them from the health and security levy. So, Mr. Speaker, all we're saying, if we're looking at the schedule to clean it up, and we may have to come back because it's a new levy. There'll be need for changes. We may have to come back when we look into it and we notice what, after further discussion, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and I just want to make a point. There's a point, Mr. Speaker, where some people say they don't have enough time, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when the Minister of Finance, regardless of who he or she is, when the Minister of Finance stands in his honorable house and he reads a budget statement, Mr. Speaker, that is the policy of the government. And there's no excuse, Mr. Speaker, if you don't read it, and there's no excuse if you don't follow what the Minister of Finance says, regardless of who he is and regardless of whether you support him or not. When the Minister of Finance stands in the honorable house and he reads a budget, that becomes the law of the country. So there can be no excuse, Mr. Speaker, to say that we were not prepared. We expect that from some people, but I do not want to hear that we were not prepared. It came too sudden, Mr. Speaker. That was said in the budget statement that it will be implemented from the 2nd of July. We yielded and we pushed it to the 2nd of August. And we've spoken to the Inland Revenue, you said that some businesses who still have issues, we will not be dogmatic, we'll give them some time so they can solve their issues. Because we want to help and we want to assist everyone with this video. We want this, but it can't be seamless because the resolution and the levy deals with hundreds of goods in this video. So there will be times when you have to come back to make changes to this video. So these are one of the times. Ask members to support this resolution.
Honourable members, the question is that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approves the draft Health and Citizen Security Levy amendment of Schedules 1 and 3 order, which amends Schedules 1 and 3 to the Act. To A, in the case of Schedule 1, include the following imported good customs tariff chapters. Chapter 25, salt, sulfur, earths and stone, plastering materials, lime and cement. Chapter 39, plastics and articles thereof. To delete the following imported goods customs tariff chapters. Chapter 88, aircraft, spacecraft and parts thereof. Chapter 89, ships, boats and floating structures. Chapter 99, special transactions. In the case of Schedule 2, to delete the following services: 8, sale of motor vehicles; 19, other financial service activities except insurance and pension funding activities; 25, other activities auxiliary to financial services activities. In the case of Schedule 3, under Part 1, Paragraph 1, in relation to Chapter 17, change sugars to sugars. In relation to Chapter 44, change organics to organics. Delete as exempted goods the following customs tariff. Chapter 39, plastics and articles thereof. To include as exempted goods the following customs tariff. Chapter 49, printed books, newspapers, pictures and other products of the printing industry, manuscripts, typescripts and plants. To replace the exempted goods specified under Part 1, Paragraph 2, and to include as exempted goods, goods under tariff headings 37.01 to 37.02 and 90.10 to 90.22 pertaining to medical equipment and parts thereof, and goods under Chapter 85 and other chapters pertaining to security equipment. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Prime Minister.
Resolution standing in my name. Whereas under Section 109(1)(a) of the Value Added Tax Act Cap 15.4 to the Act, it provided that the Minister of Finance may, by order published in the Gazette, amend the schedules to the Act. And whereas it is further provided under Section 109(2) of the Act, that an order made pursuant to Section 109(1) of the Act is subject to an affirmative resolution of Parliament, except where the amendment is the customs tariff headings only. And whereas the Minister of Finance seeks approval of the draft value-added tax amendment of Schedule 3, Number 2 order, to amend Schedule 3 of the Act by an affirmative resolution of Parliament to include as an exempt import for a period of 2 years, commencing from the 2nd day of August 2023 and ending on the 1st day of August 2025, medical equipment for basic or advanced diagnosis, whether for purchase or for lease. a computerized tomography scan, a CT scan. And Mr. Speaker, these are medical terms. And when I went to school, I didn't learn to be a doctor. So and I wasn't allowed, as the Attorney General, to allow me to bring a doctor friend. He refused. So these are medical terms, Mr. Speaker. So, as the Minister of Health will speak and explain. And whereas the Minister of Finance seeks approval of the draft value-added tax amendment of Schedule 3, Number 2 order, to amend Schedule 3 of the Act by an affirmative resolution of Parliament to include as an exempt import for a period of 2 years, commencing from the 2nd day of August 2023 and ending on the 1st day of August 2025, medical equipment for basic or advanced diagnosis, whether for purchase or for lease, a CT scan, endoscopies, upper gastrointestinal, lower gastrointestinal retrograde, cholangioplan keratography. Let me spell it, Mr. Speaker. CHOLANGIOPANCREATOGRAPHY. Arthroscopy, hysteroscopy, cystoscopy, ultrasound, 3D, 4D, echocardiography, ultrasound, mammogram, coloscopy, fluoroscopy, C-arm, and MRI, magnetic resonance imaging. Be it resolved that Parliament, by affirmative, Be it resolved that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approves the draft value-added tax amendment of Schedule 3, Number 2 order, which amends Schedule 3 of the Act to include as an exempt import for a period of 2 years, commencing from the 2nd day of August 2023 and ending on the 1st day of August 2025, medical equipment for basic or advanced diagnosis, whether for purchase or lease for CT scan, endoscopy, upper gastrointestinal, lower...
PM, you may do like a former leader of government business and simply say the same list that I read a while ago.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The same list that I read a while ago. Mr. Speaker, in spite of the fact that I'm not a doctor, Mr. Speaker, and I'm not Dr. Freezers, I think this is really a resolution that I'm proud of. And I'm sure the Minister of Health is also very happy about it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, so many St. Lucians have to travel abroad to get diagnosed for illnesses. Too many solutions, Mr. Speaker. And part of the reason why is we do not have the equipment in St. Lucia for that diagnosis. To have the equipment, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, it comes as for every parliamentarian and every charitable organization, people come every day to want to go to Matlick for CT scan, to want to go somewhere for MRI, to want to go somewhere for diagnosis that we can do here if we have the equipment, Mr. Speaker. What is the complaint? The medical fraternity says to you that they can't afford to buy the equipment because of the taxes and the value-added tax, like an MRI machine, Mr. Speaker. The VAT on the MRI machine, because that equipment costs millions of dollars. So what we did, Mr. Speaker, and you know, and when we said that the budget was a budget for health and security, we meant that, Mr. Speaker. So what we are doing today is we are zero-rating the VAT on all the equipment that is needed for these diagnoses. We take out the VAT, Mr. Speaker. Not before there was no VAT on the giving of the service. Now there is no VAT on the machine itself, Mr. Speaker. So the medical fraternity can import these materials and pay no VAT and no health and security levy. Mr. Speaker, what better statement that a government can make to support health services in the country, Mr. Speaker? And that decision was not made lightly, because there were some who said to us, said to the Minister of Finance, these people can afford to bring that equipment because they charge to use it. But the government sought no. We sought no, that we have to give them added incentive, Mr. Speaker. So the people who travel all the time, who have to go, have to pay their passage, who have to come, and we're hoping that the medical fraternity can invest in these machines and can do the tests necessary for the people of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. We really hope they can do that, so that and it's a give and take. The government has paid its part. The government has removed the VAT. The government has refused to impose the health and security levy. We hope that, and they've removed the VAT and the health and security levy on the service. We really hope that the charges made to St. Lucians are moderate. Because the government has paid its part, Mr. Speaker. Again, when they tell you about with taxing health and security, is tax. What they've done is actually the opportunity cost of these taxes. The government has waived it. And I'm sure people will understand what I mean by the opportunity cost. Because the revenue that the government has forgone is now an opportunity. It's an opportunity cost. That means that they would have had to pay it, they don't have to pay it again. So we hope that the consumer can benefit, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that is a shot in the arm for health services in St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. A shot in the arm. So the 2.5% we are being asked to pay on certain goods, Mr. Speaker. Look at what you've got in return. Look at what the government is giving in return. The government is giving up all the VAT that had to be paid on that equipment, on that equipment. And that equipment is expensive, very expensive, Mr. Speaker. That is an investment in health, a confidence in the medical practitioners of the country, so they can invest in that equipment and give the public of St. Lucia this needed service, Mr. Speaker. So no longer will we have to be running away, going away, paying a passage with the issues in air travel, air transportation, so you can stay here and get diagnosed, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure the Minister of Health is pleased with that resolution, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure all my colleagues are pleased, because all the time, every one of us, even a member of shows that I'm sure can see the experience, they have to come to ask for money to go to these tests abroad because the machine is not available in St. Lucia. So this is a testimony, Mr. Speaker, to the government's commitment to the health of the nation, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, very soon, Mr. Speaker, very soon, we're going to make a definitive and a progressive statement on St. Jude Hospital. Because, Mr. Speaker, the public of St. Lucia will see that this government is serious about St. Jude Hospital, and St. Jude Hospital, with the grace and the help of God, will be completed for the people of the south of this country. Will be completed, Mr. Speaker. And I say without any fear or favor, will be, Mr. Speaker. And then the people of St. Lucia will see what this government means when we say putting people first, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased, Mr. Speaker, very pleased to ask my colleagues, members of the House, to support this resolution to make these medical services more accessible and hopefully more affordable to the people of St. Lucia. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, the question is that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approves the draft value-added tax amendment of Schedule 3, Number 2 order, which amends Schedule 3 of the Act to include as an exempt import for a period of 2 years commencing from the 2nd day of August 2023 and ending on the first day of August 2025, medical equipment for basic or advanced diagnosis, whether for purchase or lease for a computerized tomography scan, an endoscopy for gastrointestinal, lower gastrointestinal, and a retrograde cholangiography, I think I said that right, an arthroscopy, a hysteroscopy, a cystoscopy, an ultrasound in 3D and 4D, including echocardiography ultrasound, a mammogram, a colposcopy, a fluoroscopy, and a magnetic resonance imaging. A member for Vieux-Fort North.
He has yielded to me. He has yielded.
Member for Suzel Saltibus.
I guess he wants to give me licks when he wants to give me licks after I speak. That's it. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. I just want, before I speak on the resolution, to echo your sentiments to the various activities for the carnival season, and also to congratulate the Royal St. Lucia Police Force for a job well done. Despite everything, the police was still able to take a wine, and that was good as well. But Mr. Speaker, there's a saying that sometimes you have to blow your own horn, especially in the Parliament, because you will not get the government, giving you kudos or expression. But I'm happy to see continuation in what we're doing, particularly with professional services coming under the health sector. Because you will recall, Mr. Speaker, when the Finance Act was amended, we included professional services with both the dental and other medical services falling under it, where bringing in equipment, they would not have to have paid any customs duties, Mr. Speaker. And I think that was a major step. In fact, in my time, I saw quite a few applications come in under dentists, dental offices, other labs seeking in approval to bring in some equipment. So I'm very happy. But I noticed this has a sunset legislation in it, and obviously, when that time comes, we may have to come back to extend it, because I'm sure as we progress, technology improves, things change, and we may have to add on the list. But I'm very happy that the government has added that sector to seek value-added tax amendment to assist this sector. And so I thank you on behalf of the sector, and for the fact that we continue in making these things available to our professionals. Thank you.
The member for Vieux-Fort North.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand to support the resolution which was moved by the Minister for Finance and Prime Minister of St. Lucia. And I agree with him, Mr. Speaker, that it is revolutionary, although the member for Choiseul indicated that this government continues what other governments have done before, and I am sure it is not in the same way. And I know the Minister for Finance will clarify. But Mr. Speaker, before I continue, I wish for you to give me a few seconds just to congratulate the police. I want to join my colleagues in to congratulate the police, the revelers, all of the team members, the leaders. I want to pay special tribute to my colleague, the Deputy Prime Minister and the Member of Parliament for Castries South, for his sterling leadership over the last few months in the carnival, the calypso, and so on. We had practically an incident-free season. I want to also congratulate everyone, the band leaders, or the creators, all those who have joined us here in the Parliament, and those who made St. Lucia Carnival what it was. Julian Alfred, we have all expressed our joy, and I also want to, on behalf of the people of V4 North, congratulate her and wish her well as she continues. Mr. Speaker, I wish, before I say a few words on this resolution, just to say a very special thanks to the professionals, the medical professionals in St. Lucia, who over the years have attempted, and in some respects very successfully, some of them have established medical practices, professional, very sought after services in St. Lucia, and they have provided a space for the people of St. Lucia to access high quality services. Mr. Speaker, many of them have established, whether it be at the private hospital or in their own private offices. And if you go around the country, especially in the Vieux-Fort area, the Castries area and so on, the north of the island, in the south of the island, you see more and more medical professionals establishing not just offices, not just the traditional doctor's offices, but you realize they're establishing services almost like mini hospitals. You go to establishments and you can see many professionals all at once, and you get a sense, based on evidence, that the doctors in St. Lucia, the medical professionals, whether they be providing dialysis services or other services, are really expanding their services, and this resolution will assist them in that regard. I recently returned from a trip, a tour of the new hospital which is being constructed in Guadeloupe. And Mr. Speaker, it is amazing to see the kind of equipment that they have over there. I'm sure in Martinique, neighboring Martinique, same thing. And you would think, Mr. Speaker, that it is just the skills, but it's not just their skills. We have doctors and professionals in St. Lucia who can do just the same. And as the Prime Minister said a while ago, what we are lacking is a lot of the equipment. And I know for a fact, Mr. Speaker, that even as we speak, there are medical professionals in St. Lucia who have applied for certain waivers, who have applied to the cabinet, and very soon I'm sure you will hear announcements of some very advanced services that will be provided by them to St. Lucians. And so, Mr. Speaker, when our people travel to Martinique or Guadeloupe or other countries, it is not because our professionals do not have the skills. There are some very complicated surgeries that are being carried out in St. Lucia. Not too long ago, a constituent of mine, God bless him, and his doctors, a constituent of mine just collapsed in his garden. A very good friend of mine, Mr. Speaker, and it was found that he had he had some severe trauma in his brain. And Mr. Speaker, some time ago, when you hear things like that, you would not believe that there are medical professionals in St. Lucia, particularly one of them, Mr. Speaker, who he opens up your skull, removes your part of your scalp, surgical procedure on your brain, and right now this gentleman is fine after surgery. So there are some very good examples of neurosurgeons and other medical professionals in St. Lucia who are sought after and who have really done well, and who are developing medical tourism services in St. Lucia and also services for our own people. Even before I go into the details of the resolution, Mr. Speaker, I always like, as Minister for Health, Wellness and Elderly Affairs, to encourage St. Lucians to not only check your doctor and your medical professionals very regularly, but also to carry out all your tests, your colonoscopy tests, all of your tests, especially as we grow older, especially us men, especially Mr. Speaker. The tradition is that men don't like to go to the doctors. The tradition is that, Mr. Speaker, the doctors tell you when any little ink the lady feels. Doesn't matter where in her body, she's at the doctor. But the men, we like to, we macho, and we don't want to go to the doctor until it's too late. So I always like, Mr. Speaker, to say those things. and to say also that just as the government is encouraging us to contribute 2.5% for the health and security levy, when I speak to people, I always say to them, put a little thing aside for your health. Put a little thing aside, just as you have your savings, put a little 25 cents, a little 50 cents, a little $2, $5, depends on what you're making. Put something aside for your health. Pay the NIC. Even though you are working for yourself, Mr. Speaker, pay your little NIC. Go to the NIC. Self-employed people, you can do that and put something aside for your health. Too many of us, I'm not the only one, Mr. Speaker, they come to you, people visit all of us and your relatives. When it's too late, dialysis, all kinds of conditions, when it's too late and then you realize some people, maybe through difficulty or challenges, they're not working, but those who can, put a little something aside for your health. Those of us, Mr. Speaker, who help other people, if we can, who help our relatives and so on, if you can give them $20 and you can put a little extra $5 for them, put a little something aside for the health, because all the doctors will tell you, most of us visit them, most of us quickly go when it's too late. And a lot of the diagnosis, a lot of the diagnostics can be done when we check things early. So I always like to say that. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this resolution, and just very quickly to let honorable members know why we need to do this and what role the various pieces of equipment play. We know about the CT scan, Mr. Speaker. Most people now know what's a CT scan and why we do it. It combines X-ray images from different angles of your body. So you want a CT scan of different parts of your body, Mr. Speaker. That's very, very important. And sometimes we take these things for granted, but not all of the doctors, most of the doctors would love to have access to a good CT scan. And you know, Mr. Speaker, a good CT scan at the lower level would cost about $130,000 US. So you can understand why the medical professionals would want to get relief, so that they now can assist the people of St. Lucia. An endoscopy, that one, most doctors, most people, well, let me not say most, but many people who have gone to doctors would know what an endoscopy is. It's a little tube with a small camera inside. It goes through your body, through your mouth, and the doctor can check. So it's important. No. Far from that, far from Dr. Musa, but I think it's important for us to explain to the people what these things are, so that if we are going to waive VAT, c'est mon ça pour qui ça nous a fait, parce que il est important pour ces docteurs ni ces qualités équipements ça là. Arthroscopy, Mr. Speaker, we are also doing it for that, and although it's small, one of it can cost about $11,500 US, and it's a little incision. It's mainly for the joints, to investigate the joints, Mr. Speaker. Arthroscopy is mainly to investigate your joints. So from the word arthritis, arthroscopy is very important. And we also have, by the way, Mr. Speaker, while my colleagues, tease me a bit, these can be found, Mr. Speaker. You can just Google them. And I don't want to make anybody think about, when we're in the parliament, we must encourage the people of St. Lucia while we speak to go check it out. Check what we're saying, to fact check us, to make sure that what we're saying, and we on this side, we always give you the real thing. So as we know, the hysteroscopy is from the word hysterectomy, from the word it has to do with the ladies and so on, and to check. We can go on and on. The ultrasound, Mr. Speaker, echocardiography, ultrasound, cardio has to do with what? With the heart. I spent 32 years as a teacher, so cardio has to do with the heart. So that's very important ultrasound. And our medical professionals are saying to us more and more, we are finding people in St. Lucia who are having challenges with heart disease. So it's very, very important don't wait until we have something to go check. Just like you do your normal checks, it's good to go to the cardiologist and just check your heart to make sure everything is okay. A mammogram, I think most people are familiar with that. Many ladies have gone for the mammogram, colonoscopy, and I think we need to, there's a little mistake, I believe, with the spelling there. So it should really be a colonoscopy. And again, that's another one many of us are afraid of. People tell you they don't want to do it. Especially men, it's for your colon. It's a piece of equipment that is pushed through your rectum, and to check whether there are any issues there. Doctors use it to catch colon cancer. No, your colon cancer. So that's very important. And again, Mr. Speaker, it is something I say that we need to popularize. A lot of those medical tests and so on, we are afraid. Me too, you know, Mr. Speaker. I was very, very afraid of those things, Mr. Speaker. Well, I've done almost all of these. Especially the prostate test, Mr. Speaker, especially your prostate test for men. A lot of men are afraid. I have done all of it, and I was afraid at first, but Mr. Speaker, it is very important. I think as parliamentarians, the more we speak about these things, the more our constituents will feel comfortable to go and do it, or do them. Because, Mr. Speaker, at the end of the day, we do not want to hear our constituents say it was too late. Si mete sav. A PSA test to test colon, not colon, sorry, but your prostate, to test whether in your blood there are signs and so on for colon cancer PSA. I think it's about $50, 75 in some cases. But what is $75 or $50 every year? Let's do it, because at the end of the day, if we catch it early, then the doctors are not me saying so, you know. Not me saying so. The doctors are saying, the medical professionals are saying, if we catch them early, then something can be done, and our families can save a lot of money. So all of these pieces of equipment are very, very important. A fluoroscopy, Mr. Speaker, is to check your stomach and your intestines. And the MRI, everybody, well, not everybody, but most people know about the MRI, because many individuals come to us for assistance to go to Martinique or to go to Barbados and so on. Even in St. Lucia, there are some MRI services. And I know, Mr. Speaker, that there are one or two local companies. One company has actually set up the building and the equipment. Most of the equipment is here in St. Lucia already, and they are setting up the MRI machine. And I know that there are other medical professionals or businesses, and they are setting up the MRI. So I can see in the next few years, Mr. Speaker, St. Lucia becoming a hub for medical tourism. But most importantly, Mr. Speaker, most importantly, we see the private sector working hand in hand with the government, and to see how best we can. It's not just government. The government by itself can never establish this medical landscape. Can never. No government by itself can do it. So we must work with the private sector, the medical professionals, those who are in the businesses, the people who make equipment and so on. What we want is for St. Lucians, first and foremost, to have the best medical care at an affordable price. So whatever we can do as a government, waive taxes, whatever we can do to assist the private sector, we will do. And Mr. Speaker, the troublesome one, which is really an endoscopy for the gastrointestinal and upper gastro and lower gastro tract, Mr. Speaker, the cholangiopancreatography. Really, what does it do? It's really an X-ray to treat problems of the bile duct and the pancreatic duct, bile and pancreas. So again, Mr. Speaker, it's just a long word, but if you break it down, it's not difficult, you know. Just break it down. And I encourage all our viewers and members of Parliament, once again before I sit, Mr. Speaker, I encourage everyone to do all of your tests. Carnival is over and so on. You have take a little 2 weeks, drink a lot of water and so on. Go to your doctor, do all of your tests, your prostate, your everything, your mammogram and so on. And at the end of the day, you will save money, and you will take better charge of your health. So I support this resolution, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, thank you to the members for the support. Mr. Speaker, it's important that we reiterate that what we're removing is VAT. We're removing VAT on these goods. The 12.5% that was paid on these goods, we are removing VAT. So when it's imported, you do not have to pay the 12.5% on VAT. So that is very important, Mr. Speaker. Not only duties, but VAT, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just want to make a point. Mr. Speaker, anytime I make any statement related to health, and I'm glad the Minister of Health encouraged you to take a test, Mr. Speaker. There are some people in this country who are wanting to get cheap political mileage. Mr. Speaker, I am what I am, and I will be what I will be. And regardless of how you try to make me appear to be what I'm not, it will not stick. It has not stick, Mr. Speaker, and it will not speak. So it's actually a waste of energy and time, Mr. Speaker. I recall, Mr. Speaker, I made a statement about bananas, and they went berserk. And you know what happened, Mr. Speaker? Bananas became the word of the day. All sorts of recipes, all sorts of investment. But in the beginning, they tried to make me look as if I didn't know what I was saying, Mr. Speaker. They try that all the time and they lose, but they continue to try. Last week, I made a statement about eating, Mr. Speaker, and about diet. So significant about diet, Mr. Speaker. And I made a joke about how I'd changed my diet, Mr. Speaker, and how I'd look now. And my colleague encouraged me to be on the what machine? What magazine? JQ machine. And I tell Mr. Speaker, eat what you watch, watch what you eat, and eat what you watch. Very simple. Re-emphasizing, watch what you eat, and what you eat and watch it. Very simple, Mr. Speaker. But they're so desperate, and they're looking for so much drama to exist. But that's not going to win you anything, Mr. Speaker. The people of St. Lucia understand what we're doing. Look at what we're doing this morning. We're taking off VAT from equipment, so they understand that. So even though you believe that you scored cheap points by trying to divert from these points, Mr. Speaker, I reiterate, people must watch what they eat and eat what they watch. So if you want to make more publicity, try. But the people of St. Lucia will not be moved. They have not been moved, Mr. Speaker. My record is clear. My performance in my constituency and my performance as Minister of Finance and Prime Minister is clear. So no matter how you try to believe that you can make me look small, I am a product of St. Lucia. And no matter what you try, you're not going to succeed. Once God is with me and the people are with me and my colleagues support me, collectively we are going to improve the life of the people of St. Lucia. Collectively, Mr. Speaker. And next week, Sunday, it's going to be 2 years the people of St. Lucia have lived without scandals. They've lived without shut-up. They live without being called barking dogs. They've lived without being called medicants. They've lived without scandals, your sisters signing contracts. So today, this resolution is testimony of what the government is doing for the people of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. And I call on the people of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker, regardless of whether you're yellow or red, to support the government in these ventures. Forget about people who can afford to get their medical attention abroad. Forget about people who can take helicopters and go abroad to send their children and their parents for medical equipment, for medical care. You can't afford it. So when we try to change St. Jude, to finish St. Jude, when we try to get the NIC to put more money at the OKU hospital, when we're trying to improve the conditions at the AKU hospital, when we send children or people who live in Foulachot and Mondidon and Choiseul and Bouton, when you try and send them to study to be doctors and nurses, that's what we're doing for health in the country. That's what we're doing, and you can't deny that. So imagine for your own selfish political reasons, you try your best to diminish that. I spoke about cassava. Cassava is a health food, a superfood. Make nonsense. I'm talking nonsense. We're trying to make people use honey instead of sugar. We're trying to push CMOS, Mr. Speaker, health. The minister is talking about getting your health test, Mr. Speaker. So anytime we come in this honorable house and we say something about the health of the people, something to progress, to make people have a better quality of life, particularly the people who can't afford to go abroad to get medical attention, they make a public show if it. They try to make a public show if it, Mr. Speaker. So I'm going to say it again. Eat your local foods. Try and use your local bananas, your local cassava, your vegetables, your lettuce, your cabbage, your tomatoes, your fruits. Exercise. And watch what you eat and eat what you watch. And if you don't like it, Mr. Speaker, I ask members to support this resolution to remove VAT from medical equipment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, the question is that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approves the draft value-added tax amendment of Schedule 3, Number 2 order, which amends Schedule 3 of the Act to include as an exempt import for a period of 2 years commencing from the 2nd day of August 2023 and ending on the 1st day of August 2025, medical equipment for basic or advanced diagnosis, whether for purchase or lease, for a computerized tomography scan, an endoscopy for upper gastrointestinal, lower gastrointestinal, and a retrograde Schollern pancreatography, an arthroscopy, a hysteroscopy, a cystoscopy, an ultrasound in 3D and 4D, including echocardiography ultrasound, mammogram, colonoscopy, a fluoroscopy, and a magnetic resonance imaging. And now put the question, as many as of their opinion say aye, as many as of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. I've never been so happy to put a question.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to present for second reading a bill shortly entitled United Nations Sanctions Counter-Proliferation Financing Agreement. Mr. Speaker, the United Nations Sanctions Counter-Proliferation Financing Amendment Act, the Act 2023, amends the United Nations Sanctions Counter-Proliferation Financing Act, Cap 12.30, in keeping with the Financial Action Task Force, FATF, recommendations, particularly recommendation number 7, which relates to targeted financial sanctions related to proliferation. Mr. Speaker, St. Lucia's fourth round mutual evaluation report, MER, was posted globally on the Financial Action Task Force website as of January 25th, 2021. It's there for everyone to see. St. Lucia's mutual evaluation report highlights the deficiency related to counter-proliferation financing. Since that report, St. Lucia has enacted the United Nations Sanctions Counter-Proliferation Financing Act. However, the Act does not satisfy all the requirements of recommendation number 7, pursuant to the revised Financial Action Task Force FATF 40 recommendations. St. Lucia must address these deficiencies in order to apply for re-rating at the November 2023 plenary. St. St. Lucia is expected, as part of its follow-up processes, to apply for re-rating at the November 2023 plenary on the FATF 40 recommendations that were labeled as non-compliant and partially compliant in its mutual evaluation report, the MER. The United Nations Sanctions Counter-Proliferation Financing Act has been identified as one of the critical enactments in need of amendments for the purposes of re-rating of the re-rating process. In order to correct the highlighted deficiencies, Mr. Speaker, amendments to the Act are hereby sought to allow for the following provisions. Recommendation number 7, Counter-Proliferation Financing. The United Nations Sanctions Counter-Proliferation Financing Act, Cap 12.3 notes, hereafter referred to as the Act, does not explicitly state that the Attorney General is a competent authority in matters of proliferation financing. It is therefore recommended that this be amended to make it clear that the Attorney General is a competent authority. This amendment would satisfy the requirement for legal authority to be identified for the purposes of implementing and enforcing targeted financial sanctions. Listed entry A and B under Section 2 of the Act should be amended to include an expression and any other successor resolutions. Financial action under Section 2 of the Act should refer to Section 2, Part A, to the Money Laundering Prevention Act. Section 2 of the Act should also include other business activities as described in Schedule 2, Section 2, Part B, to the Money Laundering Prevention Act. To amend Section 4(2) of the Act to include a representative of the Director of Public Prosecutions and a representative of the Department of Finance. To amend Section 1(4) of the Act to direct that the actions to be performed therein are performed without delay. To insert a new provision to direct all natural and legal persons within the country to freeze without delay any, without prior notice, the funds or other assets of designated persons or entities. To amend Section 17 of the Act to add a provision for St. Lucia to submit prior notification to the Security Council of the intention to make or receive payments under the contract, or to authorize or appropriate the unfreezing of funds, other financial assets or economic resources for the purpose 10 working days prior to such authorization. To include the amendment of Section 17, the following: that the Attorney General has determined that the contract is not related to any of the prohibited items, materials, equipment, goods, technologies, assistance, training, financial assistance, investment, brokering of services referred to in the United Nations Security Council Resolutions 2231 and any future successor resolutions. B, that the Attorney General has determined that the payment is not directly or indirectly received by a person or entity subject to the measures in paragraph 6 of Annex B to the United Nations Security Council Resolution UNSCR. To amend Section 23 of the Act to refer to all persons and not simply to financial institutions. To amend Section 25 and 26 of the Act to provide for an exception to the prohibition stated under these provisions where that person or entity is licensed, authorized, otherwise notified in accordance with the relevant United Nations Security Council resolutions. To insert a new section into the Act to refer to mechanisms for communicating designations to financial institutions and designated non-financial businesses and professions, called the DNFBPs, immediately upon taking such action, freezing action, and providing clear guidance to financial institutions, other personal entities, including DNFPBs, that they are holding targeted funds or assets on their obligations in taking action on the freezing mechanisms. This amendment should make these functions the responsibility of the Financial Intelligence Authority and the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, as they are the supervisors for anti-money laundering, counter-terrorism financing, and counter-proliferation financing, designated under the Money Laundering Prevention Act. To amend Section 21 of the Act to make provision for a person or financial institution or DNFBPs to report to the competent authority on any assets which have been frozen or any prohibitive action taken in compliance with the relevant United Nations Security Council resolutions, including attempted transactions. To insert a new section into the Act to allow the competent authority to monitor personal entities, including DNFPBs, compliance with the relevant obligations, and when necessary, to have the appropriate civil, administrative, or criminal sanctions attached for non-compliance. To insert a new section into the Act to allow for the unfreezing of funds or other assets of persons or entities with the same or similar name as designated persons or entities with the same or similar names as designated persons or entities who are wrongly affected by a freezing mechanism. Upon verification that said person is not a designated person or entity. This new provision should also create a mechanism to inform financial institutions and DNFPBs of the facts of unfreezing and delisting and their obligations thereto. In relation to the process of unfreezing and delisting, this could be placed in a schedule to the Act. Mr. Speaker, the passing of these amendments in this Honorable House will bring St. Lucia to be in fully compliant with the FATF's recommendation and prevent St. Lucia from being blacklisted. These amendments are therefore presented to you, to this Honorable House, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is another of our obligations, and we have another bill, Mr. Speaker, where I will speak on it in more detail, Mr. Speaker. But this is another of our obligations that the international financial world is putting on small islands, Mr. Speaker. Small islands, we have to comply with all these rules, all these amendments, Mr. Speaker. Small islands. But, Mr. Speaker, the clauses have been detailed, the changes have been detailed in the documents before the House, Mr. Speaker. I don't think there's any need for me to go through them. But in the other bill, Mr. Speaker, I will speak to more detail about our commitments under the FATF, Mr. Speaker. But what this bill does, it improves, makes us compliant with recommendation 7 of the Financial Action Task Force, Mr. Speaker, and it ensures that we make the necessary changes, including making the Attorney General the designated authority, specifying that, Mr. Speaker, and also including to representative of the Director of Public Prosecutions in the money as in to have a role, Mr. Speaker, in counter-proliferation financing, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I said, I'll speak in more detail on the other bill, and I ask honourable members to support this bill, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Honourable members, the question is that the United Nations sanctions counter-proliferation financing amendment bill be read a second time. I now put the question. As many as the opinion say aye. Aye. As many as our contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to amend the United Nations Sanctions Counter-Proliferation Financing Act, capped 1.12.30.
Clause 2.
Interpretation.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill. Aye. Clause 3.
Amendment of Section 2.
Clause 3 stands part of the bill. Aye. Clause 4.
Amendment of Section 4.
Clause 4 stands part of the bill. Clause 5.
Amendment of Section 14.
Clause 5 stands part of the bill. Clause 6.
Amendment of Section 15.
Clause 6 stands part of the bill. Clause 7.
Amendment of Section 17.
Clause 7 stands part of the bill. Clause 8.
Amendment of Section 19.
Clause 8 stands part of the bill. Clause 9.
Amendment of Section 21.
Clause 9 stands part of the bill. Clause 10.
Amendment of Section 23.
Clause 10 stands part of the bill. Clause 11.
Insertion of new Section 23A.
Clause 11 stands part of the bill. Clause 12.
Amendment of Section 25.
Clause 12 stands part of the bill. Clause 13.
Amendment of Section 26.
Clause 13 stands part of the bill. Clause 14.
Amendment of Section 42.
Clause 14 stands part of the bill. Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill. Honorable members, the question is that the committee rises and the bill be reported. And now put the question. As many as of their opinion say aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honorable members, I beg to report that the United Nations Sanctions Counter-Proliferation Amendment Bill went through committee stages without amendments. Prime Minister.
Move that the report of the committee be adopted and the bill be read a third time and passed.
Honorable members, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and that the United Nations Sanctions Counter-Proliferation of Financing Amendment Bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. And the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the King's Most Excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This act may be cited as the United Nations Sanctions Counter-Proliferation Financing Amendment Act 2023.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to present for second reading a bill shortly entitled Proceeds of Crime Amendment. Mr. Speaker, this bill again is part of our international obligations through the Financial Action Task Force, Mr. Speaker. And this one we did with recommendation number 4. And Mr. Speaker, we are called to meet all these commitments. We are called to follow all these procedures, Mr. Speaker. And this has a heavy administrative cost and administrative burden on us, Mr. Speaker. And the sad thing is that we have to deal with all these laws, deal with all these changes, deal with all this monitoring, Mr. Speaker. And our forms of income are being limited and they are being shortened, and they are being taken away from us liquor by liquor, Mr. Speaker. It's a crying shame, Mr. that small islands like us have to follow these international obligations, Mr. Speaker. We have to. We almost have no choice. We have to pay high price people to assist us, Mr. Speaker, to meet these international obligations, Mr. Speaker. And most importantly, the people who are under the most scrutiny are politicians. We are the ones who are called PEPs. We are the ones who go through the most scrutiny. Mr. Speaker, imagine I was asked by a bank to show my proof of income. So I was asked by the bank to send my salary statement. So I said to the bank that my salary is in the estimates of expenditure. It's no secret my salary is in estimates of expenditure, Mr. Speaker. But these are kind of things, Mr. Speaker, that we have to go through. But sometimes I wonder, Mr. Speaker, that do the people who ask us to impose these things, do they impose it on themselves? But, Mr. Speaker, we have no choice. We have no choice. We have to do it. And we have to spend the money and the resources necessary to do it, Mr. Speaker. So this one was the previous one on United Nations. This one is recommendation number 4, which relates to confiscation and provisional measures, and recommendation number 43 relating to powers of law enforcement and investigative authorities, Mr. Speaker. In a nutshell, Mr. Speaker, what it does is it amends the previous Proceeds of Crime Act, which we passed in this Parliament, to strengthen it, Mr. Speaker. To strengthen it, Mr. Speaker. Because under the Proceeds of Crime Act, Mr. Speaker, which is Act 3.04 of the revised laws of St. Lucia, the Crown is permitted to confiscate or forfeit the physical assets, land, vehicles, and cash of persons convicted of criminal offences, whereas said physical assets are tainted by the criminal conduct, Mr. Speaker. That exists already under the Proceeds of Crime Act. But, Mr. Speaker, on January 25, 2021, St. Lucia's 4th round mutual evaluation report was published, again on the FAFT website, and highlighted that St. Lucia was deficient. Even though we passed that bill, we were still deficient in complying with the above-mentioned recommendations. On becoming aware of the shortfalls in the Act, the National Anti-Money Laundering Oversight Committee, NAMLOC, worked assiduously to propose the changes to the Act that would be required. And the Attorney General, Mr. Speaker, and his staff have been constantly asking us, telling us about NAMLOC. In our ears every day is NAMLOC, Mr. Speaker. So we have to do what NAMLOC says. Mr. Speaker, but you already pay when you're small. Mr. Speaker, St. Lucia is expected as part of its follow-up process to apply for re-rating. We are rated already, and we have to be re-rated in November 2023 at the plenary of the FATF on the 40 recommendations that rated as non-compliant and partially compliant is his mutual evaluation report, Mr. Speaker. The Proceeds of Crime Act has been identified as one of the key enactments in need of amendments for the purposes of re-rating. So the original Proceeds of Crime Act was not good enough. So you have to go back in there and you have to do some amendments which are outlined in this bill, Mr. Speaker, to make us compliant with the MER report, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm sure that when we do that, sooner or later, we'll be back for another amendment, Mr. Speaker. And I'm certain, Mr. Speaker, that will happen. But, as they say in Patois, we have no choice, and the banker will tell you we have no choice. Because Mr. Speaker, that's important, because banks are now under pressure for the corresponding banking facilities, Mr. Speaker, under a lot of pressure, and certain islands in the region, in CARICOM, they've suffered one particular island, Mr. Speaker, all the corresponding relations were taken away from them. And Mr. Speaker, I don't think when we play politics in these things, I don't think we have explained to the public sufficiently what losing corresponding banking facilities means, Mr. Speaker. It means that your credit card is useless. It means that buying things on the internet is useless. It means that you can make no transactions with plastic because the bank has nowhere to clear it when you make the transaction, Mr. Speaker. And certain islands in the region have suffered from that punishment. So we have to enact that legislation. We have to enact it, Mr. Speaker, because all this is in one big soup. Corresponding banking, mutual evaluation reports, recommendations of the FATF, all of them are in one soup, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that small islands are compliant, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the Asset Recovery Unit of the Regional Security System RSS, not those that are here, not the soldiers, is what is called the Asset Unit of the Regional Security System, Mr. Speaker, Asset Recovery Unit. And they provided a draft proceeds of crime bill for member countries to review and consider in an effort to assist member countries in the development and strengthening of their respective anti-money laundering, terrorist financing legislative frameworks. The bill makes provision inter alia for civil asset recovery, which will be utilized as Cabinet has already approved the request to amend the existing Proceeds of Crime Act for amendment by Cabinet Conclusion 603/2022. So what we're doing there, Mr. Speaker, is that we bring to the House what the Cabinet has already agreed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, these deficiencies to be highlighted, amendments are sought based on the draft bill from the RSSS. We are asked to amend Part 2, Division 1 to 8, that deals with confiscation. Part 3, Division 1 to 10, that deals with civil recovery. Part 5, Divisions 1, 2, 5, 7, and 8, that relate to investigations. And Part 6, General, Part 7, miscellaneous, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the bill amends the Act by changing the definitions for the terms relevant offense and tainted property, and providing new definitions for words such as civil recovery investigation. The Act will also amend in relation to the application of a forfeiture order for confiscation order or on conviction to provide a high court with the power to make a forfeiture order or confiscation order when a person is convicted of a criminal offense, and to provide for a request for leave. In terms of a confiscation order or conviction, the Director of Public Prosecutions is empowered to serve a written notice on a person convicted of criminal conduct and to determine a question on the balance of probabilities, Mr. Speaker. A very important role for the Director of Public Prosecutions, Mr. Speaker. And that is actually a sacred position, Mr. Speaker. And the power is a constitutional position, and his power now is being strengthened by the passing of the Proceeds of Crime Act, Mr. Speaker. So we always expect that the person in the position of Director of Public Prosecutions is beyond all forms of scrutiny, is impartial is impartial to a point where his impartiality cannot be seen because he is so impartial. Very important, Mr. Speaker. It's very important. The position of Director of Public Prosecutions. Very important job, Mr. Speaker. And every word, every statement made by the Director of Public Prosecutions is a statement that has great relevance and a statement that has a lot of reach. A lot of reach, Mr. Speaker. And by the actions or by the words, intended or unintended, the Director of Public Prosecutions is a position that is always scrutinized and a position that must be beyond scrutiny, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, a number of new provisions are proposed for inclusion in the Act to make provision for the time of payment under confiscation order, interest on amount unpaid under confiscation order, and considerations of the High Court after making a confiscation order. Other provisions in the Act allow for the High Court to order payment by a financial institution variation of an order where an amount available to a defendant is inadequate and a discharge of a confiscation order, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, you will note that somewhere in the bill, any sum, if you look at section 29R, Mr. Speaker, on page 51, the minimum amount to be seized in an account is $10,000, Mr. Speaker, which is less than 3,000 US. Or is it 3,000? So anytime, Mr. Speaker, that you have $10,000 in an account, it can be seized if you fall under the remit of the Proceeds of Crime Amendment Act, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, that is something that is noteworthy. The amount that can put you in problems, Mr. Speaker, if you fall foul of this act, Mr. Speaker. 10,000 Eastern Caribbean dollars, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, there is need for clearance for the Attorney General on the matter, because there are some other acts that say 10,000 US dollars, and this one says 10,000 EC dollars. I don't know if the Attorney General can advise on that, Mr. Speaker, because we've passed some bills here that say that the banks can have transactions with 10,000 US dollars, but some of the times when people go to the banks, particularly hotel workers and people in the tourism industry, where they ask a lot of questions, even though they have less than 10,000 US dollars, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, we all for obeying the law, we all for understanding that, but we need some clarification, because solutions are being constantly put under pressure, Mr. Speaker, where there are some people who live in the US and they send money across to their relatives. The relatives accumulate the money, and when they go to the banks, Mr. Speaker, they get endless problems. If they want to change 1,000 US dollars, they have endless problems with the banks, Mr. Speaker. Source of funds. And Mr. Speaker, sometimes it's not a matter of people don't want to disclose, Mr. Speaker, but it's intimidating when a lady, a single mother from Choiseul comes to the bank, and she's saved her children abroad in the States, and they send for her 200 US, and she saves it, and she comes to the bank with 2,000 US, and the bank tells her to fill a source of funds, Mr. Speaker. And the lady doesn't even understand what's the meaning of source of funds. So she gets intimidated, Mr. Speaker. So you have to clarify whether it's 10,000 US or 10,000 EC. There's need for clarification. Not there is simple, but in the other bills, Mr. Speaker. And the banks, I know the banks have to protect their correspondent banking, and the government to do whatever the government can do to protect them and to assist them in the correspondent banking, Mr. Speaker. But let us not use these things to intimidate people and to stop our progress. And talking about banks, Mr. Speaker, the matter of opening accounts, it is still easier to open an account in Miami than to open an account in some of the banks in St. Lucia. And Mr. Speaker, we go to the ECCB meeting tomorrow. Friday is the meeting. And incidentally, I give up the chairmanship on Friday of the ECCB to my colleague in St. Vincent, Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance, St. Vincent. And Mr. Speaker, the central bank has been asked, and I think there's a document in our papers that says about the easing of locals being asked, locals who want to open bank accounts, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is something that we have to look at, the issues related to opening a bank account, Mr. Speaker. And on the other hand, when the credit unions make it easier, Mr. Speaker, we now want to regulate credit unions. And we're all about regulating credit unions. But again, Mr. Where can we win? How can we, as small islands, develop our people? If everywhere, everything we try, Mr. Speaker, we an impediment. Bananas, an impediment. Sugar cane, an impediment. Tourism, you can get warnings, travel advisories, Mr. Speaker. Financial services, almost extinct. Now, the CIP, under a lot of pressure. Financial services, there was a vibrant business, Barbados, vibrant financial services business, that is almost wiped out. With IBCs, International Trust, almost wiped out, Mr. Speaker, but it flourishes in Delaware. Delaware has a thriving financial services unit, thriving in Delaware, United States. We have small islands, but we have to comply. Mr. Speaker, provisions on civil recovery are included in the Act for the insertion of a new part under the bill. Included are provisions for the action of recovery, recovery orders, property freezing order, receiving orders, exemptions, compensation and limitation, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the search of listed assets in summary proceedings are also added to the Act. The search of listed assets in summary provisions are also added to the Act, Mr. Speaker, by virtue of his amendment to the bill, as in Section 31A. That's where the amendment is, Mr. Speaker. Additionally, provision is made in the Act under the bill for hearsay evidence, an application to the Registrar of Lands for restriction and the appointment of a management receiver. Restraining orders are provided for in the Act as a result of its amendment to the bill, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I turn your attention to Section 31A. And I want to read it, Mr. Speaker. It's important that we hear that. It's called the hearsay evidence. Hearsay, Yodi. Evidence shall not be excluded on the ground that it is hearsay or whatever degree in proceedings for restraining order. And if you can put that in part of, Mr. Speaker, the Minister can help me. Evidence upon nipu shall not be excluded. Usat chen evidence memsi ise yodi. Yodi. So evidence shall not be excluded on the ground. So si yodi, yodia sa evidence. Of whatever degree in proceedings for restraining order. So, Mr. Speaker, if their proceedings are being held for a restraining order, Mr. Speaker, the evidence, part of the evidence can be hearsay. For an application to discharge of various restraining order, or an appeal against a restraining order, or an order discharging or varying a restraining order. This section does not affect the admissibility of evidence which is admissible apart from this section. Very important, Mr. Speaker, very important, which I thought I would highlight, Mr. Speaker, that even though the evidence is hearsay, Mr. Speaker, that evidence shall not be excluded if an application is being made for restraining order, or application to discharge of various restraining order, or an appeal against a restraining order, or an order discharging or varying a restraining order. This section does not affect the admissibility of evidence which is admissible apart from this section, Mr. Speaker. So, what it means, Mr. Speaker, is Yodi. And this is an Attorney General. Is that interpretation correct? Yeah, that's what it's written in section 41, Mr. Speaker. So, Yodi, Memsi Yodi Obai. And the Yodi is strong enough, Mr. Speaker, an order can be made for restraining order against you. Mr. Speaker, That is very, very, very serious, you know. It's very serious. And then, Mr. Speaker, I know that we have to comply, but this is very serious, particularly in a small society. Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I mean, again, Mr. Speaker, Lucia was fait Liverpool. But Mr. Speaker, in a small society where jealousy and envy are part of the... Look at me. One day, I get up one morning, I say I have a house in capacity. Mr. Speaker, absolutely untrue. UOD. So, a man can have a restraining order on me and tell me say about my house in capacity. Mr. Speaker, and you know, it's a pity, Mr. Speaker, as a region, you know, as a region, Mr. Speaker, we can, because this is a serious thing, Mr. Speaker, very serious. People's reputations can be damaged on this hearsay thing, and now you're making a hearsay part of the evidence that can be included. Mr. Speaker, if you live in New York and they hearsay that you have a thing in Long Island and you live in Washington, nobody will hear about you, Mr. Speaker. Nobody hear about you. They can have a hearsay that you have something in Connecticut and you live in Long Island or you live anywhere else. But Mr. Speaker, in a small country where especially politicians can be maligned so easily. And Mr. Speaker, when we pass laws, we must always understand that we are assuming that people are going to be reasonable. That's an assumption that we make, Mr. Speaker. But that's not always the case, because look at our reputations. And again, look me as an example. Me. Further, Mr. Speaker, allegations are being made about people. And at the highest level in the society, these people have been asked to account for allegations that are made against them. Allegations. And we have, and each one of us in public life, including those in private life, but those in public life even more, Mr. Speaker, when these allegations are made about you, particularly when they are not true. And although somebody told me I mustn't talk about social media, but social media is what goes out to millions of people, Mr. Speaker. And I'm sure some of my colleagues here can testify to that. The man for Kashmir South, Mr. Speaker, what he went through, can go through that, Mr. Speaker. And look at me. I have a house in Kappa State. Friends give me a BMW. And then they double down and say they will show papers of my house in Kappa State. And if my constituents knew that I owned a BMW I had from since before I was Prime Minister. Now why can't I own the BMW? Mr. Speaker, that is the nastiness that goes for. And these things are being strengthened now, Mr. Speaker, by taking hearsay evidence. And Mr. Speaker, speaking about people's reputations, Mr. Speaker, these accusations that are made about people, Mr. Speaker, anybody can say it. And particularly now, they say it on social media. Particularly now. And Mr. Speaker, this morning I was reading somewhere how the UK courts are looking now to do something about that non-disclosure about people saying they can hide on the social media. So you go under a false name and you say whatever you want. Take a false, say whatever you want. So you say anything you want about somebody and put on a false name and say, well, you can't do anything. I understand the UK courts and the European courts are looking for that, Mr. Speaker. And I don't know if the courts in our region, because we spend a lot of money on courts, we bring a court of justice, a house of justice, $40-50 million. We are renting the Orange Grove Mall, hundreds and thousands of dollars a month, Mr. Speaker, for the courts of justice. But the courts, Mr. Speaker, the regional courts must, and that is why we went to the CCJ, because the regional courts and the courts must look now to be more in tune with what the people are saying or what the people are feeling, Mr. Speaker. Because the people are feeling, and people are feeling certain things that we need to put in the proper legal context, Mr. Speaker. I mean, look at these laws that we pass in. If they are in the hands of, Mr. Speaker, let me say something. The Director of Public Prosecutions, you know, he can almost do whatever he wants and you can't move him unless you have a committee and a tribunal. So, Mr. Speaker, the only people that the power is being curtailed every day are elected people, you know. The people that have to face the electorate are those that have been curtailed every day. And I speak not only for government, for opposition too. We politicians, our privileges and powers have been curtailed every day, Mr. Speaker. And I use the Director of Publications as an example. We have to account to people every 5 years, every 4.5 years, Mr. Speaker. But these other people, they have no, their accountability is almost to themselves. And when we speak about constitutional reform, that I'm very much in favor of, Mr. Speaker, the constitutional reform all the time is aimed at one set of people. There are only one set of sinners in this world. Only one set of sinners. Only one set of sinners, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, we are passing that legislation, we support it, but I say it's important that I say these things. Because it's not a matter of passing the laws, Mr. Speaker. Hearsay evidence, hearsay, UOD in St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, I just want to mention some other provisions, Mr. Speaker. And these are a property disposal committee, which I think we passed here. We passed to use the act when money is seized, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that doesn't mean we're condoning money laundering and drug deal and things. We're not condoning that. We can't condone it, Mr. Speaker. All we're saying is that these laws are very, very strong, and if put in the wrong hands, Mr. Speaker, can be destructive to people's personal life, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, look at me. Supposing I had a restraint, investigation of my house in Cabot State now. Supposing that happened, the law allows it. Absolutely not true. Absolutely not true. But yes, so I have to go through I would win, but I have to go through the horrors of explaining and doing everything. But, Mr. Speaker, we have to pass these laws to be fully compliant with the FATF recommendations and prevent St. Lucia from being put on the blacklist. Because you know, Mr. Speaker, St. Lucia is put on the blacklist. You know what happens? In problems. In our investment, Mr. Speaker, there is something called equal treatment, in that we are being called upon by the international financial institutions like the IMF to stop incentives, to stop giving tourism people incentives. They are saying to stop it. They've stopped subsidies completely. Right? They are saying to us, and the IMF report will be out shortly, they are saying to us that all the laws we passed this morning, waiving VAT and waiving penalties on interest VAT, the IMF is saying we should not do that. And they are saying that the way to do it is to impose indirect taxes, particularly VAT, Mr. Speaker. And this is why, when we come to this honorable house to lessen the burden on the people of St. Lucia with things like the health and security levy. We are going against the dictates of the IMF and these bodies, Mr. Speaker. Because what they want us to do is what they call resilience programs, where we impose indirect taxes, and the business of incentives, Mr. Speaker, is something that we are asked every day to get rid of. No incentives, or have what they call targeted incentives, Mr. Speaker, because of the revenue that is said that we forgo. But, Mr. Speaker, how can a small country, 248 square miles, compete with countries like Costa Rica that can give land? We have no land to give. How many beaches you have in this country for hotel development? How many beaches? And we have to compete, and locals and institutions have taken a position that locals' beaches must always be public. And you can't compare it, even a place like Jamaica, that has, and Mr. Speaker, our small size. And anytime I speak international forums, I speak about the smallness of our country, where every decision that you take, you know who it impacts on. The smallness of our country, Mr. Speaker, the smallness of our country. And just like the bills we passed here this morning, Mr. Speaker, you almost know who is who will be. But the important thing is whether we have the guts, the fortitude to deal with who we have to deal with, Mr. Speaker, and not use it as a means of maligning people and as a means of creating unnecessary, not hardships, unnecessary, the need to defend your reputation, whether we have the guts to do it, whether we have the guts. So these are good, support it. St. Lucia prides its reputation, Mr. Speaker. That's all we have in a small country. And I pride my personal reputation all the time. That's why I'll defend it for my life. But as a country, we have to defend our reputation, Mr. Speaker. But we have to guard against these kind of things, hearsay evidence. This is serious and important. And the Attorney General can probably advise the list, Mr. Speaker, this hearsay evidence thing, the OD. Mr. Speaker, I'll ask members to support the amendment. I've spoken about my reservations, Mr. Speaker. I still hold them. But I understand why they're necessary, because we have no say. And some people talk as if we have say. We have no say. If we don't do it, they blacklist us. When they blacklist us, we can do nothing about it. That's a fact. So you can play macho if you want, but the fact is, when they say do it, you must do it. And that's why we're doing it here, Mr. Speaker. We must comply, because if we don't comply, the general good of the country will be affected. But I'm also saying to the people who are practitioners on the ground to exercise a little bit of restraint, Mr. Speaker. When somebody comes from Chozel with $500 US in $100 bills, don't run them down like that. Proceed. So, you must give me, not proceeds, what do you call it? Evidence. What do you call it, Mr. Social? Evidence of what? Source of funds. Come from Bellevue, $1,000 US. You collect for 4 or 5 months. Source of funds, sign it. Mr. Speaker, the people on the ground should have a little bit more understanding of the plight of these people, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I ask members to support this amendment. It's necessary, but I felt duty bound to make these observations. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, the question is that the Proceeds of Crime Amendment Bill be read a second time. Member for Chozel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I had no intention of speaking on this bill, neither the previous one, but the Prime Minister said something which hit a nerve, and I thought, I should make a contribution. as he said, we are wavet to Vanpool. Because in my time when I was in government, I remember, the number of times they continue to shift the goalposts. And as he rightfully said, I am sure we will see other amendments coming. But Mr. Speaker, I want to urge the Prime Minister and the government, because I think that's just the tip of the iceberg of things to come. We recently heard what transpired with the government of Jamaica and the diplomats that the US have given an ultimatum. And I think this is a discussion that we need to start very, very early among regional partners, CARICOM, because to some it may be very sensitive. But at the end of the day is the ultimatum that we may be given, to go down that road, Mr. Speaker. But I also found it opportune with the Prime Minister's contribution to speak on the Prevention of Misuse, Drug Prevention of Misuse Act. Because not only is this hearsay evidence on this bill, but in that Drug Prevention and Misuse Act, it is also included there, Mr. Speaker, because over the weekend there was an incident with a very progressive young man, in my mind, who was on the board of a financial institution, a manager of a company, doing very well, a gentleman who does not smoke, who does not drink, he's a vegetarian, and at 2 a.m. his home was raided by the SSU because, and the police did have a warrant, but they said because it was reported that he was dealing with illegal firearms, drugs, and money, and money laundering. And as you rightfully said, we're in a very, very small country, and your reputation could be ruined because 20 years down the line, somebody will say, "Usav Kailite police vanilla," whether or not they got evidence. Nothing was got on the premises. But what is highly irregular to me is that the police, in their search for all of that, and I'm not blaming the police at all because the police have their work to do, but the police in all of that, the gentleman's car was right there. They did not go into his car. He has a business next door, very close. They did not go. So it speaks to whether somebody with their own agenda can just report you to the police as being involved with something. I'm not sure what surveillance, and the magistrate would have signed that warrant, Mr. Speaker, and the police could follow up on that. And I think that is very, very, it's extremely dangerous because it can happen to any one of us or any one of our families. And we need to make sure that when these things happen, there's irrevocable evidence, to address matters like that, Mr. Speaker. And so while the Prime Minister says that, there's nothing we can do, which for the most part he's correct, because we are really sardines in front of the whales. But it is something that as a region and as a Caribbean people, we need to bond together in terms of how some of these things are pushed down our throats and how we respond. Because individually we may not be able to, but collectively I believe we are forced to reckon as a region. We have airspace, we have water space, we have a strategic position, and I think we can, come together, bond together, and address a lot of these things will be coming down the road. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think I'm going to say, Mr. Speaker, but the member for sure made some interesting points, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, we just hope that we are going to pass this bill today, Mr. Speaker. All the red flags have been raised. All the flags have been raised, Mr. Speaker, and we hope that when the MER is done, we have find another one to come back to, for Namlock again. Another one to come to, Mr. Speaker, another recommendation that we will not have met. Mr. Speaker, do you know that we can get oil from a neighboring Caribbean country at a 30 or 45% discount. 35% discount, Mr. Speaker. But you're not allowed to buy it, you know. You can't buy it. 30% discount, you can't buy it. But you have to pass all them laws. 30% discount. Do you know, Mr. Speaker, that the medical people who come here as doctors, they've been under a lot of scrutiny in some countries that under scrutiny because of international politics. So, Mr. Speaker, we are victims of international politics, and we pay for it in a significant way. And oil is the best example I can bring, Mr. Speaker. You know how the cost of living in St. Lucia would have been reduced if we could have bought oil, gasoline at 30% cheaper than now? 30% of $16, Mr. Speaker, is how much? It's $4 and something cents. Minus 16. $12, $13 a gallon for a gallon of petrol, of gas. We could have bought it in this country for that, Mr. Speaker. We could have got it. But international politics stops us from getting it. But we still must pass these things. Mr. Speaker, I ask honourable members to support the legislation.
Honourable members, the question is that the Proceeds of Crime Amendment Bill be read a second time. I now put the question. As many as of their opinion say aye. As many as have a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to amend the Proceeds of Crime Act, Cap 3.04.
Clause 2.
Interpretation.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill. Clause 3.
Amendment to Section 2.
Clause 3 stands part of the bill. Clause 4.
Amendment of Section 3.
Clause 4 stands part of the bill. Clause 5.
Amendment of Section 4.
Clause 5 stands part of the bill. Clause 6.
Amendment of Section 7.
Clause 6 stands part of the bill. Clause 7.
Amendment of Section 11.
Clause 7 stands part of the bill. Clause 8.
Amendment of Section 17.
Clause 8 stands part of the bill. Clause 9.
Amendment of Section 21.
Clause 9 stands part of the bill. Clause 10.
Insertion of new sections 21A, 21B, 21C, 21D, 21E, and 21F.
Clause 10 stands part of the bill. Clause 11.
Insertion of new Part 2A.
Clause 11 stands part of the bill. Clause 12.
Amendment of Section 29A.
Clause 12 stands part of the bill. Clause 13.
Insertion of new sections 29B, 29C, 29D, 29E, 29F, 29G, 29H, 29I, 29J, 29K, 29L, 29M, 29N, 29O, 29P, 29Q, 29R, 29S, 29T, 29U, 29V, 29W, 29X, 29Y, 29Z, 29AA, 29BB, 29CC, and 29DD.
Clause 13 stands part of the bill. Clause 14.
Amendment of Section 31.
Clause 14 stands part of the bill. Clause 15.
Insertion of new sections 31A, 31B, 31C, 31D, 31E, 31F, 31G, 31H, 31I, and 31J.
Clause 15 stands part of the bill. Clause 16.
Insertion of new sections 40A, 40B, 40C, 40D, 40E, 40F, 40G, 40H, 40I, 40J, 40K, 40L, 40M, 40N, 40O, 40P, 40Q, 40R, 40S, 40T, 40U, 40V, 40W, 40X, 40Y, and 40Z.
Clause 16 stands part of the bill. Clause 17.
Amendment of Section 42.
Clause 17 stands part of the bill. Clause 18.
Amendment of Section 47.
Clause 18 stands part of the bill. Clause 19.
Insertion of new Part 3A.
Clause 19 stands part of the bill. Clause 20.
Insertion of new Section 64A.
Clause 20 stands part of the bill. Clause 21.
Repeal of schedule. Which one?
Pardon?
21.
21. At least you're paying attention. Clause 21 stands part of the bill. Clause 22.
Amendment of the Principal Act.
Clause 22 stands part of the bill. Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill. Honourable members, the question is that the committee rises and the bill be reported. And now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honourable members, I beg to report that the Proceeds of Crime Amendment Bill went through committee stage without amendments. Prime Minister.
I move that the report of the committee be adopted and the bill be read a third time and passed.
Honourable members, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and that the Proceeds of Crime Amendment Bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the King's Most Excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This act may be cited as the Proceeds of Crime Amendment Act 2023.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to present for first reading a bill shortly entitled Income Tax Amendment.
Income Tax Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move for the suspension of a standing order number 48-2 to enable this bill to go through its remaining stages at this sitting.
Honourable members, the question is that standing order 48-2 be suspended in order to allow the Prime Minister to proceed with the remaining stages of the bill at this sitting. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leave is granted. Please proceed, Prime
Thank you,
Minister.
Mr. Speaker. Thank you, honourable members. Mr. Speaker, I beg to present for second reading a bill shortly entitled Income Tax Amendment Act. Mr. Speaker, this is another part of the government's sweeping reforms as far as income tax is concerned. You may recall, Mr. Speaker, that the government promised to give people a relief as far as payment of income tax is concerned. And we did that knowing fully well, Mr. Speaker, that we were relying on the multiplier effect of giving people more money in the pockets, Mr. Speaker. That's why we increased the threshold for tax deductions. And anybody who earns less than $24,000 a year will pay $25,000 a year will pay no taxes, Mr. Speaker. And that is up the stream, because your first $25,000 of income, you pay no taxes. We did that, Mr. Speaker, and we capped the allowances to 40%, $40,000, but allowing people a leeway to charge whatever they spend, whether once it can be proven, whatever they spend on the children's education and on health, Mr. Speaker. Because we knew, Mr. Speaker, I just want you to note how the government's policies are falling in place, Mr. Speaker. Earlier on, we capped the allowances to $40,000, but we made an exemption for health expenses, in that we knew that people would sometimes spend a lot more on health, so we allowed them the tax break. This morning, we removed the VAT on medical equipment, Mr. Speaker, so we can make these medical services cheaper to the public of St. Lucia. Today, we are going further, Mr. Speaker, in terms of tax relief to the people of St. Lucia by dealing with a topic that is very serious, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, some time ago, during the COVID crisis, I said to trust the science. Trust the science. And as usual, they tried to ridicule me because I said trust the science, Mr. Speaker. I'll say it again, trust the science. Because the science has been saying, Mr. Speaker, that the world temperatures should not rise by more than 1.5%. And it was saying 1.5% degrees. And we laughed. And people laugh at me if I said trust the science, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. as we speak, the world, some parts of the world, United States and China, are overheating. People are dying because of the heat wave. And it's passing strange that people may have to leave these countries to come here to be cooler. It's a real paradox. In that, in Phoenix, I understand the temperature is 46 degrees. 46 degrees centigrade. The temperature. Huh? 51 degrees in California. You know what 51 degrees is? They can put an egg on the pavement and the egg will fry. Again, Mr. Speaker, why is that happening in some parts of the United States? In the other parts, there's flooding. And water is overflowing the banks. And crops are being destroyed. And people have to leave their homes. One part rain, another part extra sun, Mr. Speaker. And you notice in St. Lucia these days, there is no dry season, wet season, hurricane season. There's no seasons. And that has got serious problems for our crops, our food security. Serious problems. Because Tropical Storm Brett wiped out more than 50% of our bananas and our plantains. And Mr. Speaker, there are certain things that we must take beyond the political realm, Mr. Speaker. The business of food security. And that is why I emphasize that we have to take food security seriously, and we have to look at our eating habits more seriously, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, you might say to yourself, why am I saying all that? We're eating to an income tax bill. I'm saying all that, Mr. Speaker, because today we are speaking about transitioning from fossil fuels to green energy, from using less electricity to using more sunlight and probably more wind, Mr. Speaker. We are speaking about that transitioning from one to another. So what is the government doing, Mr. Speaker? The government has removed VAT on all equipment that you need to do that transition, and we have applied no health and security levy on that equipment, Mr. Speaker. We've removed it. The equipment that you need to convert into solar power to heat your homes. And today, we are giving a further incentive for photovoltaic equipment. We are giving a further initiative for that, for photovoltaic systems to warm the water at your home and to give energy to your home, Mr. Speaker. And we are saying that we allow you a reduction of $25,000 to add to the $30,000 already, Mr. Speaker. We could possibly lead to savings of about $4,500 per year on your income tax bill if you convert to that system, where you are not only creating a greener country, you are reducing our carbon emissions, Mr. Speaker, and you are getting us closer to St. Lucia, closer to the 1.5 degree limit, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, we're going further. We're going further. And we are as we speak, we are trying to hasten the process of converting the sodium lights that we use into LED lights, Mr. Speaker, to further reduce our carbon emissions and also reduce the bill of $9 million that we pay for street lighting, Mr. Speaker. Well, Mr. Speaker, it'll be remiss of me if I not say to you that that is unnecessary. That should have happened from 2016. From 2016, all the lights in this country should have already been converted into LED lights from 2016. When the Caribbean Development Bank passed legislation, gave us a loan, the Caribbean Development Bank gave us a loan, and we went to Cabinet and we approved that loan to convert all these LED lights, all these sodium-filled lights into LED, Mr. Speaker, to save us. The bank loan was approved in May 2016. Alas, in June 2016, something happened. The people of St. Lucia, and I respect them for that, they made their choice and they changed the government, Mr. Speaker. We accepted. But we said to the government at the time, that loan from the CDB that has been approved, President's approval, allow it to happen. Do not do that. They cancelled that loan, Mr. Speaker, $9 million. They cancelled it. And that money, that loan went to Suriname. that $9 million in Sudan, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we went on our knees. Do not cancel it. There is no need to cancel it. There was only one. Further, the CDB gave us a grant of over $300,000, Mr. Speaker, for that conversion, because the payback on that loan, well, I think it's a matter of 7 or 8 years, we would have paid back the loan on the savings we would have made in what we pay now for electricity, Mr. Speaker. Because a lot of people do not understand that the government pays for every street lamp. The government pays for every, I think it's about $9 million a year government pays for a street lamp, Mr. Speaker. And that would have reduced these payments and also reduce our carbon emissions and get us closer to where we want to go, Mr. Speaker. The loan was not only pushed back, it was cancelled. And then you heard about the Pajura letter. So, Mr. Speaker, there was a unit, a body called KLED. And KLED were given the contract to convert, to remove the sodium fill lights and put in LED lights, Mr. Speaker. A company called KLED, Mr. Speaker. That happened in 2017, Mr. Speaker. KLED was given that opportunity. And Mr. Speaker, when we go into government, governmental continuity, Mr. Speaker, we continue to negotiate with KLED so that KLED could continue the conversion of the sodium fill lights to LED lights, Mr. Speaker. Notwithstanding the Pajura letter, we continue to work with KLED, Mr. Speaker. The World Bank came in for a guarantee facility called MIGA, where they guaranteed, Mr. Speaker. But there seems to be an impediment in KLED not doing what they have to do, Mr. Speaker. So we've been pushing it, and only last week we held a meeting with them, Mr. Speaker, and they've begun to convert the sodium fill lights to LEDs, Mr. Speaker. But we still are not pleased with the pace at which that is happening, Mr. Speaker. So we are continuing, Mr. Speaker, to negotiate with them, and we hope that they can hasten the rate at which they are converting, removing the sodium lights and putting LED lights, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, this income tax amendment, for 3 years, Mr. Speaker, it gives us, we can claim it on our income tax for 3 years when we change to solar heating, Mr. Speaker, for 3 years. Again, helping us in dealing with the challenges of climate change, Mr. Speaker, and the challenges of carbon emission. I urge members to support this amendment, which is part of all the amendments we've done this morning in terms of VAT, in terms of health and security levy, Mr. Speaker, and in terms of the tax amnesty that the government has given, has extended up to May 2024. I urge members to support, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, the question is that the income tax amendment bill be read a second time. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to amend the Income Tax Act, Cap 15.02.
Clause 2.
Interpretation.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 3.
Amendment of Section 38.
Clause 3 stands part of the bill. Clause 4.
Amendment of Section 44.
Clause 4 stands part of the bill.
Insertion of new Section 59C.
That's clause 5.
Which one you call that?
Clause 5.
Yeah. Insertion of new Section 59C.
Clause 5 stands part of the bill. Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill. Honorable members, the question is that the committee rises and the bill be reported. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honorable members, the question, I beg to report that the income tax amendment bill went through committee stage without amendments. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the report of the committee be adopted and the bill be read a third time and passed.
Honorable members, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and that the income tax amendment bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the King's Most Excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This act may be cited as the Income Tax Amendment Act 2023.
Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I move that this House stands adjourned, sine die.
You wish to make a statement before, no? Honorable members, the question is that this House do stand adjourned sine die. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Sitting adjourned.
All right.
Eh bien, nous venons au bout de session qui consiste aujourd'hui. C'est vraiment la troisième session, 12 parlements, avec ces quatrième fois qu'il y a un parlement en session cela. Avec aujourd'hui, c'est pas un jour tellement de monde qui a espéré, puisque c'était plutôt pour discuter. Ça a été discuté en cas consiste, ça c'est semaine passée, mais la tenue des lois qui étaient notées en attention avec ça nous joint aujourd'hui, c'était une résolution Premier ministre l'an passé pour le Parlement tirer ça a créé taxe, c'est pour tirer les gens qui douent gouvernement. En chaque monde qui a doué gouvernement avec le gouvernement qui a une chance avec le Premier ministre qu'on a aidé la tenue 599 millions de dollars qui doué en taxe avec le gouvernement qui a passé la résolution pour donner une chance pour tirer l'intérêt avec punition puisqu'il ne pas payer taxe. Ou quand j'ai une punition, on peut payer plus. Le gouvernement a passé la résolution pour donner une chance pour ça payer avec moi. Il y a 2 l'année pour faire ça. Virgin?
Yes, as Michael said, we've come to the end of another sitting of Parliament. The House met today, of course, to just bring some alterations to the two motions that were discussed last week. Basically on the zero penalty for the non-payment of VAT items. The Prime Minister, in making his announcement, has said this was his incentive to the private sector. It is like a boost. So all the penalties, the interest by the private sector, that will be waived. But the Prime Minister did make an appeal to the private sector to also work with government and do their part and pay up what is owed. Also, in terms of the motions that were discussed in the lower house last week, what we saw included, because some items were included and some were deleted, but what we saw included in this was some medical equipment, Michael, and the Prime Minister went to great lengths in saying that there will be the removal of VAT on the importation of some very important medical equipment. Some of those I won't even bother try to announce, but he did say that because there's the removal of VAT and he's also the removal of the health and safety levy. He was saying that it is his desire that medical costs to the ordinary man would be kept at an affordable price so that the majority of people would have access to affordable health services.
Premier ministre vraiment dit que pour renforcer ça là, que Premier ministre fait point qu'il a trop pour quitter le pays pour aller joindre service avec. Il y en a c'est là qui a fait ces services là, particulièrement services santé. Il y a mentionné un constitue scan qui est tellement cher avec un cher c'est pas là cher en peu avec ces pistes qui c'est pas là cher c'est machine là pour faire ces services-là, tellement cher qui fait, même un service là qui est cher aussi, avec le gouvernement a décidé pour tirer ces taxes-là, ces VAT-là, ces équipements-là pour faire moins cher et pour encourager plus de monde qui a fait un service santé, qui a baillé service santé, pour ça faire investissement en dedans ces machines et faire plus à l'aise pour monde joindre ces services-là.
That's right, Michael. And in the area of health too, I think it's important to note that the Prime Minister said that very soon they will be giving a definitive statement on St. Jude's Hospital.
L'hôpital St. Jude, d'accord. Mais aussi, la tenue l'autre, ça nous a créé loi, il y a des gens qui ont créé bill, mais avant de venir là, il a créé bill. Ces lois, c'est United Nations, ça c'est loi qui pas qu'à simplifier par les pièces contrôle. C'est bagaille de simplifier comme bagaille d'affaires Nations Unies. Il y a mettre loi à sous nous compter pays avec nous. Comprenez ministre, c'est-à-dire c'est pas rien nous affaires. Nous ni pour.
Ou avec devant pour.
Ou avec des services à con avec devant pour. Et aussi la tenue en l'autre loi comme ça que ça il a créé procedure of crime. Et quand nous avons parlé en chair en affaires procedure of crime c'est en créole nous a dit bagaille qui a affecté par crime et qui par exemple j'ai dit qui en dit dans la loi à quoi dit si un monde ça dit n'importe bagaille sur un monde il s'entre et qui ça servi comme évidence avec ça comme Premier ministre dit c'est pas rien simple si ça fait pour lui.
Yeah, you could see the Prime Minister was almost, he was like just exasperated, if you will, in just speaking about the international obligations that are put on small island countries, you know, and he was saying, you know, go ahead.
Un membre parlement pour choisir qui a sous façade d'opposition d'accord premier ministre et qui criait pour ces petits pays à venir ensemble pour deux bouts contre ces barrières.
Yes, Michael, because what the prime minister was explaining is like it is like almost every week or every month there's an amendment because small countries are deemed non-compliant with some of the international regulations, and he was saying, you know, they're left with, you know, very little choice but, you know, to adhere, because the result of not adhering could result in them being blacklisted.
Right.
And as you rightly said, the member of parliament for Choiseul, he too, you know, agreed with what the prime minister was saying, and he did say it is very important that collectively that CARICOM countries come together to see how they could respond to all of those international requirements that are being placed on small island states.
Eh bien, c'était une belle discussion aujourd'hui. Nous sommes dit qu'il a pas tenu de parole à ces différents. C'est Annick ministre qui est responsable pour santé, qui parlait à ce yon émotion. Comme c'est lui qui est ministre santé, et là aussi il y a des difficultés pour l'homme. C'est différents thèmes santé. Mais quand même, c'était une session qui était très intéressante avec anticipation, particulièrement par le Premier ministre. Dernière parole, Virgil?
Yeah, well, it was, as you say, not a very long session. The third session of the 12th Parliament, the fourth sitting. Just wanted to note I think we left that just the Income Tax Amendment Act that was also read and passed, and it just makes allowances for persons to be able to file income tax for their replacement to LED lights. Yes. And I think Prime Minister did make mention that this was part of even the government's own contribution in reducing the island's fossil fuels and carbon footprint.
Ok, merci un peu Virgil. Avec ces concernant venir au bout de session Caille Constitution, un nom Virgil Léonti, Charlemagne, et puis c'est technicien, M. Vibert Rameau, et puis Monsieur Roger Lawrence, et puis tous les autres techniciens, avec directeur, ça c'est Madame
Davina Lee,
et puis tout ce travail d'IAS là, nous avons merci un peu, avec nous avons maintenant en studio nous pour continuer.